So tonight's talk is based on an article entitled Order in Chaos. All the talks except for the ones on people are taken from transcripts of talks given by my teacher. They're all available at theosophytrust.org. Should you want to check them out, you can read them for yourself. That's Theosophy, THEOSOPHY, trust, TRUST, all one word, .org. And if you go there and click on Hermes lead articles, you'll find articles that correspond to all the topics of all these talks. So I'm basically giving talks on transcripts of talks given by my teacher. He spoke extemporaneously, and those were transcribed, and they're on the website I just mentioned. I read them over, and then I too talk extemporaneously. The talks aren't prepared per se. I look over the material, but I never prepare a talk. So if you're wondering why is it so random, it's probably because hasn't been prepared. You know. I taught for many years in college and never prepared a lecture. And I prepared for them, but I never prepared one. And the reason being that I had enough college myself, enough boring college myself, that I swore if I ever were to teach, I wouldn't do it the way I had been exposed to, where people were reading notes that were yellow with age, that they've been reading for 20 years, same lectures for 20 years. I said, no, not going there. But I would recommend, if you are intrigued by anything said in any of these talks, I would encourage you to look at the article upon which the talk is based on that website. They're not always easy reading, but there's always something that will jump out at you if you look at it. And other things will just go right over your head. And don't feel like the Lone Ranger. You know. They also go over mine, you know, some of it. And, it's a privilege to be able to talk about these things as based upon the teachings of my own teacher. It's a privilege to live at the same time as someone like Amidst and the Dalai Lama and a man named Ikeda. There's a lot of light in the world at the moment. If a person can overcome their obsession with darkness, which is what you get in the media and on TV, and unfortunately through many friends and acquaintances. But if one can withdraw one's attention from that, one will discover that there's a great deal of light in the world at the moment. Not just because of people like Amidst and the Dalai Lama and Ikeda and my own teacher, but partly because of those beings. There are young people all over the planet who are interested in the types of things we talk about in these lectures. I've had the privilege of meeting with some of them lately, who most people would see as teenagers, and they're not, although their bodies are. And they're around, and they're not making the headlines, but they are around. And the future is a lot brighter than the doomsday sayers make it out to be. Basically what they're doing, the doomsday sayers, is justifying their own negativity and projecting it onto the world. And the world's reflecting it back at them. And it's got nothing to do with what's happening. My teacher said that by the year 2005, intuitive people will be able to glimpse the outlines of the civilization of the future, which he said compared to the 20th century will be like heaven. The 20th century being the most vicious century in human history, in recorded human history. So in order to believe that the future is bright, it's necessary to believe in spite of the apparent evidence. In order to believe in spite of the apparent evidence, a person has to get over what's philosophically and scientifically called empiricism. Empiricism is the view, put crudely, that what you see is what you get. Put less crudely, reality is what's perceived through the five senses. That's empiricism. Empirically speaking, the evidence isn't very encouraging. It's also necessary to believe in oneself in spite of the evidence. I mean, we all have our aspects of ourselves that we're not very happy about, aspects of ourselves that we use to conjure up negativity and kind of low self-esteem. And if we go with the evidence, we can usually amass a lot of evidence, the result of which is that we're messed up and we've had it. Maybe next life, but I messed up this one too badly. So it's necessary to believe in oneself in spite of the evidence. And the reason this is important is because no one's going to believe in you in spite of the evidence. Other people aren't going to believe in you in spite of the evidence. To the contrary. So it's up to us to believe in ourselves in spite of the evidence. This isn't always easy. If I'm depressed, or I'm negative, or I'm projecting negative things into the future, or dredging up negative things from the past, it's not easy to believe in oneself. Especially if one thinks of oneself as a body in space and time, which most of us do. Think of ourselves as a body in space and time, and that's why we say things like, "Oh, I'm going to die," or "I've got a cold," or it's all about I, and it's not about my body, it's about I. So we tend to be identified with a name and a form, which puts us in a location in space and time. that some people call now. You know, if you write a book about now, you can make a lot of money. And it's like now is something new. May as well write a book about it. It's really kind of pathetic if you think about it. But now really isn't the answer because I'm living in the now. Well, that's kind of a duh. There's nowhere else to be. So living in the now isn't the answer, because the question is, who's living in the now? And are you living in the now thinking you're a body? Oh, I'm 40 years old. Oh, really? I'll grant you that your body may be 40 years old. Oh, I've got a cold. Oh, really? I'll grant you that your body has a cold. But who's you? Who is it? Who are you anyway? If not the name and the form, in the history and the anticipations. Who are we if we're not the story we're telling ourselves about who we are? We all have a story. And it's the story we tell ourselves in order to know who we are. And some of us have a story that's we like. You know, so we like ourselves. Yeah. You know, we look in the mirror and say, I'm a winner today. Yeah. I got that out of a self-help book. It's one of the things what we can do to help ourselves. You know, look in the mirror and claim we're a winner. Other people get off on being a loser today. I'm a loser and I dig it. Yeah, it's sad. And then some of us get up in the morning and maybe we're kind of okay, whatever that is for us as an individual. I'm okay. And then we go out in the world and it all falls apart. Because there's too many people doing too many things, and there's too much traffic, and there's too much input, and there's too many signs, and there's too much TV, and there's just too damn much stimulus. So we get disoriented, or confused, or befuddled, or we start having what we call a bad day, because there's just too much. In other words, there's a lot of chaos. There's chaos, quote unquote, out there. But unfortunately, since most of our consciousness, just speaking generally, not necessarily us in the room, just us humans, most of our consciousness is a function of what's going on outside or what has gone on outside. And that's fairly chaotic. So most of us have trouble finding any mental resting place. Mental resting place. Because there's just too much going on in our minds all the time. And even if we want to calm them down, unless we practice quite a bit, we usually fail to calm them down. We might calm them down for a few moments, but then some memory comes up, or we see something, hear something, feel something, taste something, touch something. Something comes up. And then some of us will find ourselves going, as we say, all over the map. Mentally speaking, off into the future, back into the past, positive future, negative future, positive past, negative past, positive present, negative present. It's just moving all the time. And it's relatively chaotic. as opposed to harmonic. A lot of disharmony. Now, if you can't relate to disharmony within, then you're either very far along or you've mastered the art of self-deception. Which is not, a lot of us are pretty good at it. For example, it's relatively easy to be calm on a mountain trail by yourself with the birds, in a bubbling brook. Everything's very calm until you go back into the city. And the calm goes away and there's the city again. And some of us even add insult to injury by watching a lot of television, which just adds more chaos in the mind. Or, computer graphics, needless conversations. So what if a person gets tired of a chaotic state of mind? That would be a plus. I'm tired of this chaos. I'm tired of these ups and downs. I'm tired of never being content. I'm tired of using artificial means to feel okay for a few hours. A few beers, a few hits, maybe just a tiny bit of Coke. All the ways we use to try to feel okay for just a little while. The key being just a little while. This isn't to say we shouldn't do any of those things. That's up to you. But the thing to notice is that it's only for a little while. Even at best, it's only for a little while. And then it wears off and you're back to where you started, if you're lucky. You might not get back to where you started. Now this is kind of an important topic really because there's so many people suffering chaos in their lives. To varying degrees. To put the other way around, when's the last time you met someone who was actually calm? Not acting calm, calm. That's why seeing someone like Amici is good. Absolute calm. Permeated with love. Dalai Lama, calm. So in order to move toward order and away from chaos, in order to move toward harmony and away from disharmony, in order to move towards integration and away from non-integration, in order to become one person instead of many people, because at one point Plato said, the goal of all philosophy is to become one person instead of many. Now, if I think I'm a name and a form, then I'm just one person. I've got a name and I've got a form. But if I watch myself go through a day, or I watch myself go through a week, and it's not easy to watch oneself. One usually doesn't enjoy the show. But if one watches oneself go through a day or a week, one might notice that one is a different person with different people in different situations. Consequently, the idea of becoming one person instead of many begins to make sense once you realize you're not the same person all the time. I mean, you have the same name, so if you're going with name and form, you go, of course I'm the same person. No, you're not. There are people you say certain things to that you'd never say to these other people over here, and vice versa. There are people you're serious with, and there are people you joke around with. There are people you take seriously, and there are people you don't take seriously. There are people you're crude with, and there are people you're beatific with. So heaven help us if we ask the question, well, who am I really? All of the above. It's the chaos. It's not integrated. It's so non-integrated, ourselves. We're so non-integrated that we have parts of ourselves that that we hide from ourselves. Which is why we have concepts like the subconscious mind. Those are parts of ourselves that are so non-integrated that we have made ourselves unaware of them altogether. Although from time to time they can quote-unquote pop up. And then there's the aspects of ourselves that are really non-integrated, and they're in what's called the quote-unquote unconscious. Safely hidden away so we can pretend to be whatever the hell it is we're pretending to be. You know, a doctor, a street person, you know, you name it, that's somebody's being it. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of who one is. So let's say a person gets tired of being in a state of disharmony, or of conflict, or dis-ease, disease. I'm not at ease. When's the last time you were at ease for longer than 10 minutes? And if that one doesn't get you, how about half an hour? How about a whole day? Without the help of any substances. Because lots of people are fine. I'm fine. Yeah. Now Freud didn't think it was possible to be at ease. He thought it's so rare. He just said it's not even possible. If you repress enough of it, then maybe the part that you don't repress could be at ease, but only because you've gotten rid of a bunch of it that's not in play at the moment. So, in order to be interested in order and chaos, a person has to some extent, get tired of the chaos. Not out here, the one inside. The outside isn't causing anybody a problem. If I have chaos inside, or conflict inside, or dis-ease inside, you call it whatever, not okay inside, it's not because of the outside. That's worth a thought or two. Next time you're not okay and the reason is out there, wrong. There's nothing out there that can make you not okay. Otherwise, Gandhi wouldn't have been okay. And the Dalai Lama wouldn't be okay. But they are. The outside's not good. It's not bad. Technically, it doesn't even exist, except in your consciousness. You can't get out of your own consciousness to find out whether it exists independent of your consciousness. You'll never know. So it comes down to one's own consciousness. Now the good news is it doesn't have to be chaotic. It doesn't have to be conflicted. It doesn't have to be unhappy. And it certainly doesn't have to be any of the above, putting the blame outside oneself for one's condition. If you're not happy at the moment, it's not because you had a tough childhood. There, you'd be unhappy too. Wrong. I had a horrible childhood. Probably worse than most of you in the room. And I'm not unhappy, but it's not the reason I'm unhappy. I mean, it took a little doing to process. But no one's doing it to you. That's worth thinking about sometime. Next time you think you'd be okay if it weren't for X. That's just a way of not looking at yourself. Blaming it on X. And if we all do that together, then we can actually form the impression that we have to eliminate X so we can be okay. And that's called war, with which we're all familiar. Once we get them under control, we can all relax and be okay. And as Gandhi observed correctly, winning a war has never made anyone okay. Not so far. World War I was the war to end all wars. It was said at the time, and people believed it. Just get this one out of the way and that's it. So the good news is it's not necessary to be in a chaotic state of mind, or a conflicted state of mind, or an unhappy state of mind, or a non-integrated state of mind. It's not necessary. No matter how many people tell you something to the contrary. What Nietzsche called the naysayers. The naysayers, they always get the spotlight. The ones that tell you can't be happy, you can't be okay, you can't be calm, you can't be at peace. You're much too screwed up, you'll never be at peace. They're lying to you. We can all be at peace. Correct? It's a matter of degree. It's not like you're either totally in a state of chaos or you're completely at peace. It's a huge spectrum. So one could say one can be more at peace, conflicted less of the time. How? What do I got to do? Well, a weekend retreat's not going to get you there, so save your money. It doesn't cost anything to move toward peace, inner peace. Yeah. So save your money. Peace can't be bought. I mean, you can go somewhere for some money and feel good for a few days until you get home. And there she is. Or there he is. Or there they are. Or the goddamn weather's not right. Boys, weather gets me down, man. I'd be in bliss consciousness if it wasn't for this weather. So it's so easy to do. To make excuses for our discontent. It's like we enjoy our discontent so much that we rationalize having it. You'd be that way too if. So in order to move toward more internal order, or less internal discontent or chaos, a person has to be interested in becoming more content, or less chaotic, or less disintegrated. In other words, a person has to get tired of the drama, of discontent. I mean, drama's fun. It makes you feel alive. But it's drama and it's illusory. And we all know, because we're not 6 years old, we all know that yesterday's big deal or last year's big deal or last decade's big deal is nothing at the moment. Even yesterday's big deal is probably nothing at the moment. So why make it something at the moment? Because it won't make a damn bit of difference to us a year from now, a week from now. So why not put that knowledge to use? Which means we have to pull back a little bit, step back. Now the other cool thing is something called the universal inheritance of humanity, which you're not going to find in your school system, which is currently ranked 72nd in the world. So we're supposedly a developed country. Our educational system is 72nd in the world. Because we're not teaching people anything except how to pass tests that are mandated. So we don't teach people, young people, that there's something called the universal inheritance of humanity. It's universal. It's vast. It's on something called the internet. So in one sense, there's no excuse for not being aware of it. And we just graduated the first high school class who have grown up with computers, which means they live in a different world from the ones we grew up in. They're growing up in a world where all the information in human history is at their fingertips. If they want to know what Buddha said, Krishna said, Muhammad said, Jesus said, Hitler said, they want to know what anyone said, all they got to do is type the name in. You got kids talking to other kids, 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old. They're talking to other kids the same age all over the planet. It's going to be hard to convince them that those children are their enemies in 20 years. Because they've been talking to them for 20 years. And they don't give a damn what country they're in. They're friends. So most of us are dinosaurs compared to 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds. It's a different world. They're living in a planetary consciousness. And they're not even into the nation idea. They're just talking to other human beings about stuff. So there's a universal inheritance of humanity that's more available than ever before in human history. And that itself is an interesting thought to ponder. It's never been this much information available before in human history. Ever. And it's available to everybody. So people who are interested in, well, what is this ageless wisdom, quote unquote? Or this perennial philosophy, quote unquote? What are the truths of human existence? You can find them today. They're in libraries, but they're also inside your computer. And what a person could do if they're tired of the chaos within is go check out some of the universal inheritance of humanity. What have the great teachers had to say? You don't have to go ask anybody anymore. You know, some priest or some monk who studied some particular lineage. You can just go and ask Google now. You know, what did Buddha say? What did Jesus say? You can go find out. This is if you're tired of chaos. And you'll find out that they all said basically the same thing. They all said it's not necessary to live in a state of chaos. They all said it's possible to move toward cosmos, harmony. They all said that our essential nature is peace. Or, quote, the kingdom of heaven, which is within you, said Jesus. Or the Buddha nature, which is within you, said the Buddha. Every great teacher has said that our essential nature is peace. Our essential nature is compassion. Our essential nature is light. Even the physicists are now saying our essential nature is light. So if you don't like quote-unquote religion, try physics. It'll tell you the same thing. It's about light. Which is omnipresent. In his homage, he says, while there is no inside or outside, in that most people are identified with the body, there is an inside, so we tell them to go inward. Even though there's no inside and no outside. But there seems to be. So if we want to find any kind of a relatively less degree of chaos, we have to go inside, they say, these perennial teachers. But if we go inside, we just find more chaos. You got the mind in there doing its number. If we try to concentrate, the mind starts asking us questions like, why are you doing that? What's the point? Get real. Get back, get into the real world. Get out there and buy something. Yeah. Go to your club and make fun of the people in other clubs. Feel sorry for them because they're not onto it. The only way to move toward cosmos, harmony, is to start noticing nature, start noticing seasons, start noticing cycles, start noticing how things balance out. Start noticing that there's nothing random. And what seems random is a lack of understanding on our part. What seems miraculous is a lack of awareness on our part of how laws function. In order to move toward harmony, a person has to understand or try to understand the universal teaching, said in many different ways, that we live in a universe that's law-governed. Law-governed. This isn't too big a stretch in the 21st century, now that we've had a good 3 centuries of hard science. And the harder we do the science, the more we discover that everything is governed by laws. And we name the laws. And if someone doesn't want to believe in them, that's fine, but they still pertain. Gravity exists whether you, quote, like it or not, or believe in it or not. Karma exists whether you believe in it or not. Oh, that's some Eastern idea. I don't like karma. That's karma. That's some weird Eastern trip. It's called cause and effect. If you don't like the word karma, try cause and effect. We live in a universe of cause and effect. What we're not taught at school, but will be eventually, is that our thoughts are the most potent causes that we make. Far more potent than physical actions are. But since most of us think we're our body, we think what we're, quote, doing has to do with what the body's up to, which does have something to do with what we're doing. But what has much more to do with what we're doing is what we're thinking. Every one of those thoughts is a cause, which means it's going to have an effect, which we won't see because we're not perceptive enough. We think, well, if I just think it's not going to hurt anybody. Wrong. It's false. So to move toward less chaos, it's necessary to take a look at one's thinking. Because my thinking is what's creating the chaos. It's not outside, as we said earlier. So I'm creating my own chaos by my thinking. I mean, we know a little bit about this in areas like psychosomatic medicine. We can make ourselves ill through our thinking. And our feeling. So cosmos has to do with the mind. I can't be generating a lot of disharmonious thoughts and hope to become calm. I can't be generating a lot of negativity just in my mind and hope ever to become calm. So as Amici says, it's necessary to declare war on the mind. You got to declare war on your own mind. It's the only just war, contrary to the teachings of St. Augustine, who first came up with the idea of a just war, thereby violating in spirit and letter the person whose teachings he claimed to be following, namely Jesus. There's no such thing as a just war except the war on one's own mind. But it's a hard war because it's easier to have the fight out here. That's easy. But take on your own mind, which means it has to be observed, which is no fun. Just watch the thing. Now that's the thing that's being watched, your own mental process. That's the only thing standing between you and peace. It's the only thing. And what's on your mind's mind? Well, it's not a mystery. All you got to do is look at it. And there's some things on it more than others. There's kind of themes. Everybody has certain themes. What they think about the most, what they almost never think about, and all the stuff in between. You can almost prioritize it. My main thought is. The main thing on my mind is. And to save you the trouble, the main thing on most people's minds is themselves. or not necessarily just themselves, but their life, their day, their week before, their tomorrow. So me is the main thing on my mind, which means I live in a kind of a tiny little world with me at the center. And then just out from me might be my quote-unquote close friends. And I allow them almost as much reality as I attribute to myself, or importance. And the further out it goes, the less real it becomes. Until if I'm thinking about 6 billion people on the planet Earth, it's pretty unreal. They're not as real to me as I am to myself. So the first step in moving away from chaos, and I'll use a much maligned word, spiritual. The first step in moving in a quote-unquote spiritual direction is to learn or practice putting oneself in the place of others. Just imagining. Imagine yourself a prisoner in an American base with no charge against you, being tortured. Imagine it. Just imagine yourself in the position of other human beings. Imagine yourself as one of the 2 billion people on the planet that won't get enough to eat today. Imagine yourself being frightened to the extent that you don't know if you're going to live out the day or not. Because there are people with machine guns all around. And they don't seem to care who they shoot. And some of them are 12 years old. Fully armed. Now, if a person can put themselves into the position of other human beings this way, then they can start to feel the enormity of human suffering. Which isn't a negative. Compared to what we're usually thinking about, it's a positive. Because at least we're in touch with the human condition. I just read a headline that says Bill Gates is giving up everything to have to do with Microsoft so he can devote his entire fortune to helping those in need. There's someone who's thought about the human condition and not about himself. That's rare. There's also someone who's at peace. It's almost a paradox. By thinking of others, you can move toward peace. By thinking of yourself, you move toward chaos, self-obsession. A little teeny world that's so fragile that anything can upset it. Whereas if a mind is thinking about the big picture, it's not all happy, but at least it's a big picture. Of which one is a teeny tiny little part. Now what's the deal about the big picture? It's temporary. Everything in it's temporary, including what one calls oneself. In terms of the body, temporary. Everyone you know, temporary. All 6 billion people on the earth, temporary. Every nation on the earth, temporary. Every religion on the earth, temporary. No permanence anywhere. All these world religions now, it's been predicted, none of them will exist in 200 years. Something better will exist. And it won't be a bunch of names spiritual things with names. So I'm a Christian, I'm a Buddhist, I'm a Muslim. Those are just words. The world's had enough words. How about being a human? Cuts across all the categories. That's where it's going. We're getting people born who are humans. And they see one another as humans, not categories. All these religions are dying. That's the Dalai Lama. Tibetan Buddhism's dying. And he's not bereaving it. It's time. Christianity's dying. Catholic Church has known that for a century. All these isms are dying, in spite of people clinging to them, claiming theirs is the only true one. It's like saying my ray of sun is the only real one. You know, you punch a bunch of holes in a piece of cardboard and hold it up on a clear light day, and you get underneath you get these rays of light coming through, and on the top there's just pure light, no individual rays at all. That's reality. So in order to get more cosmos, we have to get over these categories we're all stuck in, that we believe to be true. My category is better than your category. Which means what? Conflict. I can't have cosmos if I have conflict. I can't have inner peace if you're wrong and I'm right. So I got to get over being right. Which means I have to catch up with Socrates, whose claim to fame was that he knew he didn't know, which is the definition of a learner. So we got to get over what we think we know in order to have inner peace, because it's what we think we know that's messing us up. We think we know who we are by looking in the mirror. We think we know how old we are because of some birth date. We think we know who we are because of some damn occupation. Yeah, I'm a doctor. Right on, man. It's pathetic. I'm a truck driver. You can watch people, watch yourself included. No wonder Amish says it's a dream. It is a dream. And it's a temporary dream. But it's a manifestation of something that's not a dream. So to move toward cosmos, we have to put our mind on something that's not changing, that's not temporary, that's not part of the flux. Because if one becomes aware of the flux, the impermanence of all things, one can become cynical, one can become negative, one can become nihilistic, one can become dangerous. Oh, it's all just illusion. So I do whatever I damn well want. Not in the universe of law. You can do whatever you want. But every action has effects. And the main actions are mental. I mean, the hippies had the right word when they talked about vibes. You know, good vibes, bad vibes. You know, there's more to it than that. But they're on to the fact that there's more going on than meets the eye. And if you're sensitive, you can feel it. And you call it vibes if you want to call it vibes. If you happen to run across someone all of whose thoughts are positive, you can feel it. You can also feel it if you run across someone all of whose thoughts are negative. Heavy. Bad vibe. So how do you live in a world of disharmonious vibrations, bad vibes, and not get drawn in? By engaging in something that involves what for many people may as well be a swear word. The word is discipline. Disciplining one's mind to not get drawn in. Not merely be the product of one's quote-unquote environment. Gandhi said a vow, V-O-W, another dangerous word. Gandhi said a vow is a right angle. It's like you're going along and you say, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm going to make a vow, I'm not going to do this anymore. That's a right angle. You're going along and you hit a wall. And from now on, you're not going to do that anymore. It almost takes a vow to move away from chaos. I'm just not going to do that anymore. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen anymore. It means when it does happen, you're not going to cooperate anymore. If I start getting negative, I'm going to go sit down somewhere. I'm going to read something positive. In the part of myself that says, screw it, I don't want to read something positive, I'm going to do it anyway. But I'm not going to be able to do it anyway unless I've made a determination to myself, if not a vow, to do it. Otherwise, my mind will talk me out of it. Which is why it's necessary to declare war on the mind. Because your mind doesn't want you to be at peace. If it did, it would cooperate with your efforts to concentrate, with your efforts to meditate, with your efforts to engage in some spiritual practice. If your mind was on your side, it would cooperate, and it doesn't. It gives you all kinds of reasons why what you're doing is silly. You'll never make it. Maybe in the next life. You're too far gone. Don't even try. Look what happens when you try. You'd be better off going to Starbucks. Take your computer over there, have yourself a latte with 81 variations. Why try to concentrate? None of your friends are concentrating. Don't want to tell them what you're trying to do. They'll ask you what's wrong. What's wrong with you? Stock car's on tonight. You're going to concentrate? Sit at home? Looking at some mandala? Entering a mandala by, So it comes down to who you're going to follow. You want to follow the culture? You've had it. Because the culture is going down. If you don't know that yet, you'll find out shortly. You're going to follow some self-help guru? It's not going to work. It won't work. It won't give you peace. No matter how many affirmations you do. I am happy today. Who's saying that? And who are they saying it to? So it's necessary to begin to filter things out. to live more consciously. Start filtering out what's permanent and what isn't. It's doable. What's permanent and what isn't? Well, none of this is permanent. Doesn't mean it's not important, but it's not permanent. What in oneself is permanent and what isn't? And the thing in oneself that's permanent is called consciousness. Not what's in consciousness, like thoughts, feelings, images, memories, fantasies, imaginations, all that's in consciousness. But the thing it's in, consciousness itself, is permanent. You can't remember a time when you didn't have it. And some of you are going to be quite surprised to discover that you still have it after you quote-unquote died, because you're not going to quote-unquote die, although your body's going to. And if you think you're your body, then you think you're going to. And you're going to be surprised to discover that you're not going to die, but your body will. But you'll still be conscious. So why not be conscious while your body's alive? And having discovered that one is conscious, why not start sifting and deciding and prioritizing what you want to have in the consciousness that's permanent, that's changeless in its essence? Why not start choosing what you want to have in it? Something's going to be in it, and you can have anything in it you want to. Why not put Buddha in it? Jesus, put them all in it. You can think about the goddamn stoplight that's holding you up, or you can think about Buddha while you're at the stoplight. Or Jesus, or Gandhi, or Krishna, or Rama, or anybody you want. Think about light. Think about the sun. It doesn't rise or set, ever. That's just a conventional way of speaking. The earth turns. The sun doesn't rise or set. Which means consciousness doesn't rise or set either, whether it's in a body or not. And technically it's not even in one. The body's in it. So your body's in your consciousness, not the other way around. That's worth thinking about. Someday your body won't be in your consciousness. Well, what will be in it? It depends what you do with your consciousness while you have a body in it. Because as what many people have said, what you experience quote-unquote after death will be no different from what you've been experiencing quote-unquote before. It's not going to suddenly change at the end. The content of consciousness. If your consciousness is conflicted and disharmonious during life, it will be conflicted and disharmonious quote-unquote after death. If you're interested in that, check out the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, or any great teachers that talk about quote-unquote after-death states. They're no different from sleep. So you want to know what your after-death state's going to be like? Check out your dreams. Self-realized beings don't dream. Not even this one. I mean, they see all this, but they know it's ephemeral. But what isn't ephemeral in all this is consciousness. Now we're very fortunate, and this is a secret information you won't find on your television set or in your newspapers. But we're very fortunate that we have in the world, for lack of a better way of putting it, fully enlightened beings, most of whom are unknown to humanity. There are some who are known, and we've mentioned a couple already this evening. But there are other fully enlightened beings who are not known, at least generally speaking. They know each other because they live in what's called the mind beyond all minds. Capital M, the mind beyond all minds. And that's where enlightened beings are, so to speak. And they're all conscious of one another. Like somebody asked Amici, have you met Sai Baba? She said, no, but I see him all the time. The mind beyond all minds. Now, because there are beings in the mind beyond all minds, the spiritual path remains in existence for people like ourselves. Because those beings, through their ideation, keep the force of the Buddha nature alive on the planet. And that's a very sacred idea. But because it's the truth, as pointed to by people like the Dalai Lama, Gandhi, King, many others, Amici. She talks about Mahatmas. Now these beings, unlike ourselves, can see the future, and they can be not propitiated, but one can try to move in the direction of what they represent. One can use them as a source of inspiration. In other words, the Buddhas and the Christs and the Krishnas and the Ramas and the Mohammeds and the Moseses and anyone you want to mention, they all still exist. They never did not exist. Death is an illusion. It's something that happens to a body. You and I are going to survive our body's death in whatever state we have achieved by then. So the beings I just mentioned clearly didn't die when their bodies did. So to think of them as historical artifacts is a huge mistake. One's denying oneself the reality. If you like Jesus, he still exists as much as he ever did. Any of them. And the thing they all have in common is none of them started a religion. None of them started a religion. They came and they taught. And they taught a certain way, at a certain time, to a certain group of people. And the very same being taught a different thing at a different time to a different group of people. But all the teachings were the same. And then centuries later, we're fighting over which one was real. It's pathetic. Plus, we use the past tense. Time's an illusion also. So there's hope. If you like the Buddha, he still exists. If you like Jesus, he still exists. But not in the sense in which there are any differences. Not in the sense in which one of them is true and the other one isn't. It's like saying the sun that shines in Ventura is better than the sun that shines on Hong Kong. It's pathetic. The same laws apply everywhere. The same sun that shines everywhere. The compassion and wisdom and love that is the ultimate nature of reality or of consciousness is eternal, is accessible, but a person has to withdraw one's attention from the flux, from the dominant, negative, divisive consciousness. And one has to do this quietly, without talking about it, except to others who are also trying to do it consistently. Not just once in a while, not just on a certain day of the week, not just at a certain place at a certain time. It's either all sacred or nothing is. It's not like this is a sacred location and this one over here isn't. The sun's shining everywhere. So the Buddha nature is everywhere. The Christos is everywhere. What we need to do is let go of our hang-ups with words and then start fighting over the words. It's not about words, which is why little kids are most on before they learn a bunch of them. That's when they're fun to be around, before they learn the words. That's why Jesus and so many of the great teachers say we have to re-become the child, regain the child state thou hast lost. In other words, you've got to unlearn all the words. Not literally. The words are helpful, but they have nothing to do with reality. Even the word God, Buddha, those are just words. Proper nouns. You can't get there through words. But there are some words that help one get there. But there are no words that will deliver you there. And there's no person who can deliver you there. There are people who can deliver you there for a moment. Maybe. But you got to keep yourself there. And that's where the quote-unquote discipline comes in. Just keep going back to the part that isn't chaotic. And the part that isn't chaotic is the part that's eternal. That's the cool thing. The happy, joyous, loving, compassionate, wise part, in quotes, is the part that's eternal. And it's omnipresent, which people like Viktor Frankl discovered in a concentration camp in Germany. He discovered it right there, the Buddha nature, in the camps. Amici says you better look for the good in every single thing, including the mistakes of others. Because if you're not, you're going to miss the boat. She's not saying be a cockeyed optimist, but the light's everywhere, even in the darkest places. And if we start thinking it isn't, then we're starting to carve it up. And we start carving it up, we call one part we've carved up good, another part we've carved up bad. We're starting to miss the boat already. Because in the final analysis, it's not good and it's not bad. And this article says it's not bliss and it's not pain. It's pure consciousness for which we don't even have words. It's a state that these enlightened beings are in. And because of them, we have a chance. not by propitiating them, but by trying to become aware of what they taught, and by thinking about what they taught, and then by trying to see how that might be applied to our waking state out here in the world. In the end, one has to remember something, according to this article, called the X factor. The X factor is the part of it you don't know about. You got all the variables, you got it all figured out, but you better remember there's an X factor. And the X factor is the part that doesn't appear to follow the law, although it does. But it's the part that isn't predictable. There's always an X factor. It's what you don't know. Yeah. So it pays not to know. As Lao Tzu said, learning comes about through daily increase. The Tao is known through daily decrease. So just keep subtracting out what's temporary, what's chaotic, what's disharmonious. Just keep subtracting and you'll start to get to what's permanent. The screen against which all the impermanence is playing. Sometimes called space, sometimes called consciousness. But the main thing is I cannot be at peace as long as I'm stuck in categories to which I've assigned positive and negative meanings. I'll only be able to be at peace when those categories that I've assigned positive meaning to are present. So take off the assigned meanings. So we have 2 minutes left in a world with no time. So I'll just end on a time note, because it's easy to say it's always now, but it's rather difficult to understand it existentially. But one high being said that time is the illusion produced by the successions of our states of consciousness. Time is the illusion produced by the successions of our states of consciousness. So if we learn to concentrate, then while we're concentrating, there's no successions occurring, which means there's no time, which one can become aware of. But as long as it's all busy states of consciousness are succeeding one another, there will be time and we will be its captive, which we are right now because there's only 1 minute left now. So if you're interested in this, what's been said, I would recommend reading the article called Order in Chaos. It's incredible. And it points to a perfect utopian society that exists now, always has existed, always will exist, but not on this plane, in this world. And within that society, there's rulers and there are subjects, and there's no distinctions made, and everyone's very gracious. And that's the mind beyond all minds. So, here we all are. Thank you for coming.